in the big sefer Samech Kuf Samech Vav.
Hamshef Samech Vav, New Mimer, Parshas Vashala.
So, yeah, that Chittas has to hold it, nothing else could hold it. Put down, we shouldn't use a door of Kodesh to support it. That might interfere me looking at certain figures. I don't know, maybe not.
Oh, we use 2 water bottles. Or cups.
Okay, good, that's good. This is not really helping much anyway. There we go. What's this about?
So it doesn't twist around.
No, this thing out of it.
Is it recording?
Yes, recording.
Now we added some length in the previous, well, we didn't really learn the previous Maimon, Parsha Vav. So we're going to have to refer to certain themes which occur. You know, we began that Maimon, we didn't even get into it in any length. So we're going to have to refer to certain inyonim there, but since I want to make a little bit of progress into what is a whole new section of the Hemshech Tovei Samech Vav, and we only learn on a limited basis a few times a week, and it's hard to cover all the ground. And therefore, I'm skipping the previous Maimon, and we're starting here with the principal lead-in to the whole new section of the Hemshech, which is this particular Maimon. Now this particular Maimon here, even though it looks just to be a Hemshech and part of the whole Hemshech of Samech Vav, which it is, it has a very interesting history. Are you familiar with the history of this Maimon? I think I told you once the story. I didn't tell you the story. So it's well known that the First World War was conducted by the Germans, Yamach Shimon V'Zichron, Kulam. On the day, the Kaiser, who was at that time the Kaiser Wilhelm the third or whatever it was, Yamach Shemai. And Germany was at that time a monarchy led by this particular monarch, and he was the one who started the idea of the German conquering of the whole of Europe, eventually the whole of the world, the whole concept of Deutschland über alles, Rachmanin Islam, the whole thing, and some of the basic principles were later taken up by the Hitlerists and the Nazis. So the Rebbe Rashab, it's well known on certain occasions, had to visit Berlin for what was ostensibly the sake of his health and other factors. And at this particular time, when the Kaiser Wilhelm was planning the whole war, and Germany was gradually building up its power to begin the advance, the invasion of Europe, the Rebbe Rashab have to be in Berlin on a couple of occasions. And very interesting things happened in reference to this whole case of Wilhelm and the whole thing. And the Hasidim have it, and the Rebbe once mentioned it, the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach, that there's pretty little doubt that the Rebbe Rashab deliberately interfered in the Inyonim Aruchniim in order to break the power of this Kaiser Wilhelm which, even though it did a tremendous amount of damage throughout the world, and 21 countries from all over the world became involved in the First World War, including Australia. The Australians were very deeply involved, and thousands of their men were killed. It was the most terrible war, but he fell in the end, and he didn't carry out all that he planned and the whole thing. So there was a time when this was all sort of boiling, as you might say. The Rebbe Rashab was in Berlin, and it was around about the time of the winter, because Pasha B'Shalach comes out at that time. And the Rebbe Rashab said to the Frierdiker Rebbe, who was accompanying him at that time, he said that he wants to go for a walk in the gardens at the Royal Palace, at the palace that surrounded, the palace in which is Kaiser Wilhelm world. And he wanted to go walking in the grounds. So the Frierdiker was quite taken aback by the request, but nonetheless he, of course, acquiesced, and they found their way into the center of Berlin to the Royal Palace, and they went for a walk in the gardens. So while they're walking, the Rebbe Rashab noticed that in a certain part of the gardens there was like a small cottage, like a small house, very beautiful looking, very posh looking, but it was very, very small and private compared to the immense buildings of the palatial palace. So he asked Frierdiker Rebbe, what is this shtibel? What's this little house in the middle of the grounds? The Rebbe Rashab answered, the Frierdiker Rebbe answered that this is like a Wirtshtibel. You know what a Wirtshtibel is? It's like a little workhouse. This is where he wants to make a private decision. He wants to be misbeinen in all of his plans and all of his inyonim, and he wants to be free of all of his courtiers and all of his advisors, and he wants to be misbeided, and this is the house where he does it. This is the shtub. That's where he goes, and that's where he gets away from everybody, and he makes his own deliberations leading to his own decisions. So the Rebbe Rashab said he wants to go in. He wants to go into that shtibel. So the Frierdiker said, can't do that. It's high security, and very, very high, privacy and the whole thing, and who knows if there's not eyes watching it. You can't get in there. The Rebbe Rashab continued by asking, where's the guard? There must be a special guard or a special set of guards that they look after this particular part. So the Frierdiker Rebbe said, yeah, he thinks they're over here in this area. So the Rebbe Rashab walks up to the chief guard over there, and he says, listen, I want to go in. So the guy just laughed at him. He said, no way, Rabbina, no way, you can't go in. So the next thing is the Rebbe Rashab waved at him a big sum of money in German notes, which where the Rebbe got it from is also interesting, but it was quite a sum of money in the currency, in the paper currency, and he sort of waved it under the nose of this guard, so this guard's eyes start watching the notes floating around under his nose, and all of a sudden he sort of looks all around, and he makes a whole cheshbon where his men are and all the rest of it. He says, well, if you come back in about another 20 minutes, I can maybe do something, but you have to do it very quick, and you mustn't tell anybody, and it's very high security, the whole nonsense. So the Rebbe Rashab and the Frierdiker Rebbe sort of walk a little bit to the side, and they sort of take it as if they're, instantly watching what's going on around the grounds. And back in quarter of an hour, 20 minutes, they're back. And so he's all ready, and and he darts over to this house, and he opens with the key, and he lets him in. He says, you must go in there, you must only be there, a few minutes, and you mustn't ever tell anybody, and I don't know anything about it, and you don't know anything about it. So the Rebbe Rashab's quite calm. He's very calm, and he's not under any pressure. and he walks into and he looks around and he sees that there's like a little study past the hall, and there's like a desk, and on the desk there's a big thing of paper, and like a pen and everything. There, all the pens and all the ink and all the things are all ready. And so the Rebbe Rashab walked in and he sat down at the table, in the case's chair, and he took the paper, he dipped the pen in the paper, and he started writing that posik. Vayelech Hashem Sayom V'Ruach Kodim Azah Kol Halayla, and this was in the year Tovrei Samech Vav, and he wrote the first part of this Maimon. Exactly to which point on our pages here, I can't tell you, but it was like into the biur, the Maimon, not just the kasha and the posik, but it went down into the actual bifnim of the Maimon, and the Friedrich Rebbe what's going on around here? These guys are likely to show up any minute. So he says, Tat, it's getting late, he thinks we better move out of here. So all of a sudden the Rebbe Rashab stopped writing, he put the pen down, and he very calmly walked out, and then this guy was standing out behind a tree somewhere watching that nothing happened. He very swiftly locked the door, and everybody made their way swiftly to their way, as if nothing had happened. So the Hasidim say that with that he wrote this, which it's well known, the Hemshech of Samech Vav was Likas Kabbalah's Panei Mashiach Tzidkenu. With that koyach, the Rebbe Rashab broke the whole power of the case. It still had a tremendous effect, but he was Meshaber the whole inyan, and he broke the whole power of the. And then there was another thing during the same visit, where the case appeared in public. He appeared and he made this huge public appearance, and the Rebbe Rashab and the Friedrich Rebbe went up into this big pyramid, like at the side where all the people were looking down. And the Rebbe Rashab put on a pair of glasses so he could see more to a distance. And he put his eyes on this case of Wilhelm, and wherever he went, the Rebbe Rashab followed him with his eye. So it's almost the time for the case to speak, and all of a sudden he went all pale and he went all funny and he started to sweat. So all the people getting anxious. This is his big appearance, all his aid, the comms and everything. They're saying, what's going to be? He's what's happened to him? He's going crazy. What? He's failing at this moment. This is his big moment. And so all of a sudden the case says to the people who are running the whole thing, he said, there's two Juden up there on one of the pyramids, and he says one of them is making me meshuggah with his eyes. So he said, you have to get rid of them. They have to go, otherwise the whole thing's got to be called off. And so they went up, and eventually all these people get up to the Rebbe Rashab and the Friedrich, and they listen, the case that says you have to go, otherwise there'll be big trouble. So the Rebbe Rashab got up and he said, okay, fair enough. Okay, we don't want to spoil things. We'll go and everything. And then under the eyes of all these thousands of people, the Rebbe Rashab and the Friedrich made their way down. Instead, they went out behind the pyramid, and they went out. So the Chassidim say that with that, he mamish broke the time of Samech Vav. He began the weakening of the whole thing. With them, Cook was at him. He followed him all the time with his eyes at him gebroch. As he broke the Etzem Koyach, and then in Lubavitch there was Simchas Torah just before the war broke out. Mamish. The Rebbe Rashab spoke the whole Simchas Torah by night without them going to Hakofis. They never made any Hakofis in Lubavitch that night. Simchas Torah by night. They didn't make any Hakofis because they didn't have time. It became Ayom, and the Rebbe Rashab was still Fabring. And he spoke several times during this Fabringen about the Kaiser. And he said, is der Deutsch, is der Amalek, the Tim Chesech Amalek. He said, he's the German and he's the Amalek. And he said, you have to break the remembrance of Amalek. And they say that's what saved you. I say something to you guys don't know about it. I never heard the whole story. Okay, so that's connected with Vayelech Hashem Sayam. That's a little bit of the background of this Maimah. and it's like a whole new start in the Hemshech of Samech Vav. It's like a whole new, it leads into a whole new series of inyanim. But I thought that it might be of some interest that you should know about those inyanim, and you should repeat those inyanim and get them in your mind, because it's very important to know that our Rabbeim were people that they have an effect on the world. It's well known that the Rebbe brought down Stalin in Makshumay, and it's very well known. The Rebbe Melech HaMashiach Hatuntik brought Stalin in the year Toshin Yudain when he had Kipeged, and they said that he paid it at the Rebbe paid it because of the Rebbe. Mamish at the moment the Rebbe spoke about, and that's when he paid it back. And there's many other things that if we examine carefully that the Rebbe was Mabatul, that the Rebbe changed them. Kain Sehoyo in many inyanim, that the secret and the key to the whole world is the Rebbe, and that particular Rebbe at that particular time. And therefore, who broke the whole koyach of the Soviet regime? Who broke the whole koyach? The Frierdiker. By being imprisoned by them and by getting out, they became completely broke. The whole story of Yud Beis Tammuz. Why did the Rebbe say that Yud Beis Tammuz was so important? And the Rebbe said Yud Beis Tammuz is one of the most important dates in Jewish history. That's what the Rebbe said. So people think it's a Chabadski Yontor, Yud Beis Tammuz, Yud Teskizlev, what's up? The whole Soviet regime began its gradual collapse. What are you guys looking at?
They broke glass, they threw a glass window.
No, it sounded about the same.
Yeah, glass window. Glass windows.
Huh?
Sounds like a smacked through glass window.
See, unfortunately, this whole groups of them, but they just sit in those rooms day and night. Whole groups of them. I mean, I'm more familiar with a few of them. Just day and night, they sit in the rooms and they do nothing, ever. It's a terrible monster. It's like people in a prison. They just sit day and night and they walk around, smoke cigarettes, talk. And at night time they go out, and sometimes it's about 10 o'clock. They dress up and morning, it's like never and probably because their parents pay no. So they see people running too, so it's a soft money, I'm sure. So anyway, as the Rebbe, and that's the whole thing, people now, I mean, the matzah now it's Yisrael is sakonis nefashos. I mean, it's just absolute sakonis nefashos. And people are beginning to realize now that all the rumors and all those that thought they could take money and everything was fine, they're all beginning to realize now that everything is closing in. So, what is the answer? Why is that happening? Because they would not listen to the Novi, the Rebbe, the Melech HaMashiach. He told them what to do. He's been telling them for years, and they wouldn't listen. No, that's what you get. So it's not so pushed. Everything is run by the Moshe Rabbeinu, Shebedoya. He is the one to which all the Amshochas go. So if you let them go and you receive them, then Ma'atoiv Manoeh. If you don't, then you just bring trouble. And here we see with this moment, the Moshe Rabbeinu, Shebedoya Ahu, he brought down this case. Otherwise, they would have taken over the whole world. They would have taken over, first of all, the whole of Europe, and then they would have got into other countries, and they would eventually, and that's what he planned. Anyway, that's Indian from Amalek. That's the koyach and the Indian, the clipper of Amalek.
You mentioned one of these machines, both of them are.
Yes, with pleasure. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I wouldn't have necessarily gone for that. Somebody had to go outside to turn it off. I hope he hasn't gone out to start with those guys, not Kedai, just be trouble. Okay. B'siyata d'shmaya Shabbos Parsha B'shalach Reish Samech Vav. Now this pasuk is written prior to the final sipur in the Torah of Kriyas Yam Suf. And it's written the following: Vayoylech Hashem es hayom v'ruach kodim azo kol halayla. And then it's written at the end of the pasuk, Vayiboku hamayim, and the waters split. Yiboku, it's a passive, and the waters split. Vayoylech Hashem es hayom, the Eibusha literally conducted the sea with a ruach kodim azor, a tremendously powerful east wind. Now the word kodim is from the word kadima, which is well known when we reckon the four directions, or the four sides. Then kodim, or front, is always in reference to the east. The word kadimo, kodim, refers to the east. So now our east wind, so without going, I mean, we could go into the reason why is kodim always the front, and it's not really necessary at this particular point. What is of interest in this particular reference is that our ruach kodim is a powerfully dry wind, and its effect is usually to dry things out. So therefore the Eibishter, prior to actually splitting the water in such a way that the water became dry land, and the water divided up into 12 sections, as is well known and brought down in Divrei Chazal, and also Rashi brings it Pirush al Torah and so on, and the wondrous passage of the Jewish people through the Yam. All of that is amazing nes shalei pi hateva that occurred. However, prior to that, there was this like lead up, whereby the Eibishter conducted the Yam with this tremendously powerful east wind that literally blew against the water. It was like a contra wind against the flow of the water, which was in the opposite direction, going towards the west. And this tremendously strong wind was blowing the whole time at the water, and obviously having two effects on it. Aleph, forcing the water and straining the water at being able to continue in its normal flow, and in addition to that, drying the whole around, or drying all the air and everything around the water, having what you might say a tremendously high drying effect on the situation. So that indicates that prior to the actual wondrous nes, which was not just that the Yam drew back and made a place for the Eden to go through, but it became completely dry land, and all the other wondrous things that happened, and it divided itself in such a way that the Eden could all go through according to their shvatim, etc., etc. Prior to that, there was, as it were, a forerunner, whereby this powerful, absolutely unusual, but nonetheless, Aruach, with Aruach indicates a feature of the Inyan of Teva. It's after all something which is not completely beyond Teva, but it was like a forerunner that this wind acted in a way against the Yam, and in the situation which was developing from that, was using its influence, which is like dry heat, against the flow of the water. So from that we see that there was like almost a forerunner to the actual nes of Kriyas Yam Suf, which was al pi hateva, or al kaponim. It's still at a certain link, or what we might call grasp, in the Levusha Teva, in the Levushim, in the garments of the Teva, even though the way it functioned was Shaloi al Pi Teva Harogil. Oh, but that immediately presents a question that since we see that the ultimate Nes was something completely beyond nature altogether, well, what did you need this lead up whereby you were using the inyonim of nature to, as it were, create a situation in which a Nes would be able to occur with all its shlemas? If you're already going completely beyond nature, then go beyond nature in that prat as well. And just everything could have happened in a moment, but even shaloi kol hachona klal, klal. That's what you're going to ask yourself now in the mindset of the reader. What is the necessity for this lead-up, which Al-Chaponim seems to be ochuz bi-inyonei ha-teva, if it's not an inyan from teva greater, to an inyan of a nes, which was completely l'mayla mi-ha-teva, u'b'meila im kain, what necessity was there to, as it were, lead up to it through a inyan tibi, just make the whole thing malachatchila legamre shaloi al pi ha-teva. And that's the question that we're going to face with in the mind. And therefore says the Rebbe that Yelach Hashem es hayam baruch kodim, in the way with kol halayla. This went on for hours in the nighttime, because it's well known that the actual splitting of the sea was mamish in the early hours of the morning, in the very beginning of the dawn of the day. Vayiboku hamayim, and the waters split. As well known, mayim is a plural word, and therefore the passive verb is also in the plural, vayiboku hamayim. That's very interesting over there, that there's the Rashi writes over there, the vayiboku hamayim. If you're familiar with your chittas over there, Rashi says, kol mayim shebo'ilon, not just the water of Yam Suf, but all the waters in the world all split, as well known. That's why all the goyim asked what's going on, and they realized that something was happening in some central point of the world, because they saw that their waters were also splitting shalei al pi ha-teva klal, and that Rashi stresses with those few words that this was a nes kloli, to the whole machias of zeh ha'olam, of this world, not just a prat in one part of the world. And Rashi says, Rashi, if you look carefully, Rashi in Benegeh to the east wind, Rashi goes slightly out of his normal approach, and he describes this east wind as a very powerful spiritual inyan, and he says that the east winds Baklala are very powerful and they're very drying and damaging. But then he brings a few psukim which indicate that he sees in this got him something especially symbolical and part of the whole net. So Rashi's also obviously dealing with a problem. What's this lead up of a wind blowing to the whole greatness of the net? And therefore Rashi makes it appear that this is like a mamutza between something which is just the normal flow of things and absolute nes. So we could say with that, Rashi is being merameis upon him. There is such a question that we see here. We're going to ask him, what's the status, as you might say, what is the function and the status of this particular ruach? But chorik lahovi, ba'aloi kriyas yam suf loy hoyasa inyan tivi. The whole inyan of kriyas yam suf was not a natural thing. Ki im hoya neis niflo hayotzei midarche. It was a tremendously wondrousness that went completely beyond Darchei HaTeva, as well known that in Roiv Mekaymes, in Yiddishkeit, Beklal, when we want to bring a dogma of a great nes l'mayla mi-ha-teva, for example, in contrast to Chanukah Upurim, that they were nisim, but they were muluboshim, somewhat at least, but Darchei HaTeva, we bring a dogma from Kriyas Yam Suf. From that it follows that be'etzem ha'mahus and be'etzem ha'inyan, the nes of Kriyas Yam Suf was completely beyond the Darchei HaTeva, and we need to find exactly where. So therefore I was meramis to you that the actual nes which is bi'ikar in the Torah, the Nesek Kriyas Yamsuf, and when I get to the passage of the Yidden, the Yam, that's an essential part of the net. The actual passage of the Yidden through the Yam is an essential aspect of the whole thing. All of that was completely beyond the normal functions of Teva. If that's the case, if that's what you might call the classification of Kriyas Yamsuf, that it's aneis niflo, shaloi mitachei Teva, lama hoyet shorik liyeish haruach kodim. Why do we need this east wind, this very powerful wind that blew? Shazo kamoya hanhoga tiviyah. It's almost similar to our hanhoga tiviyah. That there was something that resisted the Yam and forced it within the powers of Teva to act shaloi alpi its normal function, but the power that went against it was also somewhat, or at least it appears to be anhogativiyah. So the Rebbe says, Asher b'yemes o yozer l'mayla mi'ateva. So the Rebbe said the truth of the matter is that this was completely beyond the Inyan from Teva. V'loi hoya tzodik liyesh shum hachonis lozeh. So the Rebbe is saying that if the Nes of Yam Suf was so completely beyond the whole Inyan from Teva, then you didn't need, and it wasn't necessary for there to be any form of hachonis to it. Where you're dealing with something where you're approaching and dealing within the Inyan HaTeva. For example, like we said in the Milchemes HaShmonim Neged the Yavonim, that's the Ikar basis, the part of Chaponim of Chanukah. Or if we take the Nes of Purim, so we see different stages and dargis where one Inyan in the Teva led to a further Inyan, and there was like build-ups. First of all, Esther went to the Milan. First of all, before that, she was taken by him as the queen. There was a whole series of different build-ups. There was the whole Suda, first of all, the whole Suda Sachashveres. One thing sort of led to the other. And then after all these different lead-ups, then there was a further, what you might call, culmination of the whole Nes in the same Dover Shehoel L'Toiv. But the Rebbe says the whole classification in our understanding of the Nes of Kriyas Yamsuf was not like that. It's completely beyond Teva altogether. So if you're going outside of Teva altogether, then you don't need a lead-up. You don't need a preparation. Right? You can just come along and change the Teva, because that's what you intend doing anyway. Why was it necessary for there to be this like natural hachana, which seems to be b'derech HaTeva, to something which was completely beyond the Teva? As if you're going completely beyond the Teva, and go Melchatchila completely beyond the Teva. What was the necessity of this work, Kadim, as it were, pushing heavily at the Yam the whole time? And therefore, it's very interesting, without going into all the details of that right at this particular moment, but maybe another shiur. Once we already, we've got to move in a little bit tonight and establish the main point that we're trying to get at. But the Alter Rebbe, it's well known, the Alter Rebbe in Shara Yichud, in Perik Beis, at the beginning, Shara Yichud Vermuna, which we're coming to that now, we're not all that far away, we're starting up before Shavuos in the Chittas, is you'll notice over there that the Alter Rebbe also deals with this whole inyan of the wind which blew on the waters, and caused the waters to stand, So if you look over there, you'll see that the Alter Rebbe also, in a very delicate way, albeit maybe in a slightly less direct way than here, the Alter Rebbe brings in this whole question, and he brings in the whole fact that the Ruach Kodim was involved in the movement of the water, and they're being held back, etc., etc. And if you look up over there, you can maybe see different nuances, how unbelievable dikduk of Tanya, as is well known, Tanya is unbelievably meduyak, called Tagi, how the Alter Rebbe is miyashiv, or he deals with this particular question, albeit not directly, but it's certainly implied there. But since that's not our purpose at the moment, we'll just deal with the question here, Ba'ifan Klal. Ulahovinze, and in order to understand that, this is the famous Chabad Kederach, but once you've asked a question, in order to understand it, you have to go way up into or something, then you've got some idea what you're talking about, hopefully. So Lahovinze, Tzorich Lahovin Mashin is Bu'aliyu. We have to understand what's explained about the Atzilus Nikra Odom. But the world of Atzilus is called Odom. And why is it called Odom? That seems to be the Hebrew of Elikus. Odom Atzilus is Elikus. And Odom means a man. Odom means a man. So he said, no, that Atzilus is called Odom, Al Shem Edamer Le'elyon. I shall be compared to the High One. Now it's well known that that's a pasuk in Yeshaya Novi, and that is referring to Yeshaya Novi is foretelling the collapse of Melech Bavel. He's telling the collapse of the king who sent the armies against Jerusalem, but that's Nebuchadnezzar, Melech Bavel. So the Yeshaya Novi says that he's gonna be brought down. So it could be that it's not necessarily referring to Nebuchadnezzar, maybe referring to Sanchedev, or it's referring to the king of Bavel. And the kings of Bavel is one on, but they considered themselves. They considered they had deitic powers. They considered themselves to be like Rahman and Klan, like Getchke. And so therefore, this expression, Edamer Elyon, is really a negative expression, but it's used in Siddur and in some of the great works in an amazing way. So Yeshaya Novi says that David is going to bring you down, referring to the Melech Bavel. He says he's going to bring you down because you said about yourself, amongst other reasons, he said, because you said about yourself, Edamer Le'el, I can be compared to the Eivishter. In other words, just like the Eivishter runs the world, I also got a part in that. And so Yeshaya Novi foretells that because he said that, and because that was his attitude, that over the ages is going to bring him down, and bring him down in such a way that all the world will see that he was only a very shaky boss of a dom, and he wasn't Adem Elyon v'chule v'chule. What do we see from that? We see that there's a lotion and an expression in the Novi where he says that I can be compared, or I am compared to the Most High. Edamer Le'el. So it comes along the Shlo Kaddish. You've all heard of the Shlo. But the Shlo is a Rosh Hashanah Shnei Luchei Sabris. That's a famous sefer that was written by the Rabbeinu Yeshaya Horovitz was his name. But he was a very great early teacher of the Nigla and the Kabbalah in Europe. Shortly after the time of the Arizal, and prior to the Alter Rebbe, prior to the scholars of Siddur Adidei, the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe, and so on, that the Alter Rebbe tremendously valued this sefer, the Sefer HaShlo. Without going into all the unbelievable details, that Rabbeinu Yeshaya Horovitz, he was a Levi, he called the Sefer Shnei Luchei Sabris. So it's not the custom in great Sforim to refer to it as Shnei Luchei Sabris, because the one or two people said that that's a little bit over the attempt to call a ordinary sefer, to call a sefer written by a human Shnei Luchei Sabris. Well, that's referred to the Luchei Sabris. They felt it was a little bit, maybe overdone. not chashon that the shlo meant bad, but they thought it was a little overdone. Therefore, they always the custom is always to refer to it as shlo, shnei luchesa. You don't call the sefer shnei luchesa bris, but you call it the shlo. Now, he's brought in many places in Siddur, and the Alter Rebbe said prior to his going to Mezerich, when he went to see the Maggid, the Alter Rebbe said that he considered himself a shlo yid. That expression, Friedrich Rebbe brings it in a famous sikha. The Alter Rebbe said that he follows all the inyanim of this great sefer, the shlo. So by that time, the Alter Rebbe was an unbelievable Gaon, an unbelievable leader of Yiddishkeit, even before he went to the Maggid. And nonetheless, the Alter Rebbe said that he, in all main questions and in all main things, in all main issues, he follows the shlo. It was only after he went to Mezerich and he saw the Maggid, he went to Maggid, then there were certain, what you might call modifications and nuances of alteration in the Alter Rebbe's whole conduct. Well, upon him, the shlo is a tremendously basic work in Yiddishkeit. So the shlo says that the word odom, why is it that a mensch is called an odom? The word odom is based on that phrase, adameh le'elyon, I will compare myself to the Most High. A mensch is called an odom because his whole inyan is that he compares himself, and he can be compared, and he is compared to Elakus. In other words, that a mensch is, how do we say, he's bedugma shel maila. Right? We see that the pasuk says, Na'aseh odom b'tzalmeinu kidmu seinu, that we'll make man in our image and in our likeness. And so the word adameh le'elyon indicates, or that pnimis ha'inyan, the mensch is really bedugma shel maila. He's really he's a living example of all inyanim, how they are in Elakus la'maila. So the interesting is that we get that from the statement of the Russia, the Goy Russia, what he said about himself at the Adameh le'elyon, and Yeshaya Novi said that you're going to be brought down because we use that phrase as an understanding of the word Odom. Right? However, it's mavur in the previous Maimarim that the world of Atzilus is called Odom because Al Shem Adameh le'elyon liyos shehu b'chinas gilui ha'helem, because the whole inyan of Atzilus is gilui ha'helem. Now we're going to have to spend quite a bit of time with the basic explanation of these themes in order that we should be able to get into the whole inyan, which gives us a very basic appreciation of themes in Siddur. There's two main oifanim of Gil Elakus, how it is Lamaila. The truth is that there are several, but in this particular context, one is what we call Yesh Mi'ayin, one is what we call Gilui HaHelem. But Yesh Mi'ayin means that the Makabel, or the receiver, literally, which is the Yesh, that comes about in an oivan that it has no connecting power whatsoever with the koyach of the Elakus which brought it about. In other words, it comes about purely mitzad the power of the Ein Sof to produce a yesh, b'li kol kesher or ishtalshus or gilui b'neihem. And that's why it's called yesh min ho'ayin. How can you call the Evish the ayin? The Evish, he's the Evish the yesh. Well, it takes yesh min ho'ayin. No, the yesh l'kavi Elakus which brought him about is like yesh l'kavi ayin. It's like that that's a something, and the Elakus is completely negated from him, even that it can only be called that which is not. In other words, he has no idea what behemoth it is. Ein beineim kol achas or kol kesher. There's no ishtalshus or gilui beineim, and therefore the yesh it doesn't necessarily feel the ayin cloud or cloud. The ultimate inyan for yesh for ayin is like the mention lamato, all the inyanim in olam hazeh, that they exist in such a way they don't really feel the emes of bittul that they have the inyan for Elakus, until it can be as amato for Adameh le'elyon b'emes. He can say, I'm compared that he has no feeling, no knowledge whatsoever of Elakus. That's inyan for yesh mi'ayin. However, there's another form of Gilui which is called Gilui HaHelem. But Gilui HaHelem means that everything is in a higher state, present in a higher state, and it just goes through a certain ishtaushlus, and it comes out into Gilui in a slightly lower state. That means that everything was there before, and now it just undergoes a derivation into Gilui. Now that's the hepech of Yesh Mi'ayin, because Yesh Mi'ayin is not like that. Yesh Mi'ayin is the immediate Matthias of Elikus, or that which comes out from it has no knowledge or no kesher, and no hishtaushelus or lead up one to the other cloud. Shenken Gilui HaHelem is another idea altogether, where the dover which is misgale has a kesher with the Helem, feels the Helem and is aware of the Helem. It's just that it's a further derivation downwards into a more tangible form of existence than it was in the Inyan HaHelem. So the Rebbe says that Atzilus, the word Olam, Atzilus, the Olam, that is the Inyan of Gilui HaHelem, and which means that the whole of Olam Atzilus really existed on a higher level prior to its coming into being, and all it did, it was yored. It's not even mishtaus. This Gilui is yored and comes down into a form of more tangible revelation, like what it was before, and therefore it's called Adam. Adameh le'elyon. With that, we ought to hear a chiddush, because there are two ways that I can say that I call Olam Atzilus Adam. And here the Rebbe is saying that we call it Adam al Shem, the way it came out from its shoulder, and therefore we call it Adam. In other words, Adameh le'elyon, that it's come in such a way that it has a direct, comparable basis to the shoulders from which it derived. That's the Inyan of Adam. Because there's another reason we can call Olam Atzilus Adam, and that is that it's already got 10 spheres, and it has all the inyanim that we find in the koiches of a mensch. And the Alter Rebbe in Perek Gimel in Tanya says that all the powers that we have in our neshama all derive and are common derech ishtaushelus kol ha'olamas from the 10 spheres of a Atzilus. Therefore, mitzad the 10 limited spheres in Atzilus and their way of interrelation, sometimes we call it Adam. And therefore, the connection with the Adam Lamata, he's also Adameh le'elyon legabe Atzilus. However, the rest says here that the main reason here we're calling Atzilus Adam is not because of the 10 koiches which are in a tziyur, in a form like they are by the Adam Lamata. Why would that be? Because ultimately the Eibishter did everything for the sake of the mensch. Everything is made for the sake ultimately of the mensch Lamata. Therefore the 10 spheres are also bedugma how it is by the Adam Lamata, and the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya on that basis we can learn from the mensch too. And that's one of the reasons why Atzilus is called Adam. But the Rebbe says, we're referring to Atzilus Adam mitzad another time. We're saying that Adam is called Atzilus mitzad the fact that it came bo'evin shel Gilui HaHelem, that it's similar to the way it was in a higher state. It's just a derivation downwards, hepech the Inyan of Yesh Mi'ayin. In other words, what was previously there in a higher state just came down and revealed itself. For example, one of the ifanim of that is like we see, for example, the Inyan of machshava and dibur by the mensch. For example, everything you have in your machshava, well, that's what gives you and feeds your speech. So when you talk, your megala, you reveal what was behelim inside your machshava. In other words, you don't talk anything that wasn't really there in your machshava before. It's just that it undergoes a certain symptom, because you can't talk out everything that you have in your machshava. Therefore, it's a certain yerida and symptom legabi the machshava. But you can't talk anything, and you don't talk anything which is not really there in the Inyan HaMachshava. Therefore, the diva is called Gilui HaHelem. It's called like the revelation of what is a Helem, but the Helem is not a Helem muchlat, a complete Helem. It's just a higher state, and it goes down to a certain symptom, comes out into a lower state. But that's the union of the actual Isis Adibur. Remember, those Isis Adibur, particularly the Oyer Shabahem and the Teichan, well, that is Gilui Ahelim Legabi the union Amshol. And they're all dugmois in the Koiches HaOdom, in the union of Gilui Ahelim. So that was it. That's why we refer to Olam HaTzilus as Adamel Elin, as Odom. It's the fact that it's called Gilui Ahelim, that it's just a derivation of something that was there below. So now we need to understand, what do you mean it was there below? Olam HaTzilus is the first main Olam. Prior to that we don't really do. I mean, maybe we do. We don't really know other Olamas. Because Olam HaTzilus is Elikus. It's not yet created world, Chas v'Shalom. If I remember, what is the state prior to Atzilus, which makes it only Gilui Ahelim. So in the previous Maimon, the Rebbe spoke about that, and we're soon going to come on to that in a second, because in order to understand that, we've got to understand a couple of other points. And then we'll have to understand also what's this whole concept of Atzilus. What does it mean, the whole concept of Olam HaAtzilus? Shehu Prince Gilui Ahelim. V'hagam Dixi, it's written, Ve'achochma me'ayin timotei. Hagam is always a lashon of akasha. That even though it's written, Ve'achochma me'ayin timotei, we just said that Atzilus is not Yesh Mi Ayin. We just said Atzilus is Gilui Ahelim. So the Rebbe said it well as a pasuk in Eov. There's a famous pasuk in Eov where he says, "Ba'chochma, the wisdom, the first sphira, Chochma is Me'ayin Timotei. It is to be found from the north, literally. But that indicates Yesh Mi Ayin. Because if I say Me'ayin and Timotei means a lashon of Matzia, like you walk along, you find something that's called a Matzia, that's called Timotei. And so you find something you didn't know was there before, it doesn't have any existence like ever you before. So Chochma Me'ayin Timotei indicates that really Chochma seems to be Yesh Mi Ayin, and Chochma is the beginning of Olam HaTzilus. Chochma is the first spirit of all the 10 spheres. In other words, it's the first spirit in the world of Olam HaTzilus. So how do we just say no? Olam HaTzilus is really Gilui Ahelim. It was all there before, and it just came down and revealed itself. It's not Yesh Mi Ayin. It's written about Chochma Me'ayin Timotei, where that tends to indicate that the whole beginning of Olam HaTzilus is Yesh Mi Ayin. He says, and this Buri Yil, that's already been explained about. Masha Atzilus hu Adamel Eliyain, whatever Atzilus is Doima to Elikus, Hainu Legabi Ak, compared to Odom Kadmoin. Now I'm not going to repeat those words anymore, because that's really a shame Kodesh. And according to Chassidim, you're not supposed to say those two words together. So therefore, I've already said everybody, you got it clear, which means the primordial Odom. Odom Kadmoin, everybody got it, that's called Ak. He said that the Inifan Adam Elin and Atzilus is Legabi this world, in inverted commas, called Ak. V'gam Legabi Klolos HaKav, also Legabi the generality of the Kav. Ki Beish Mini Amshoches Yesh. There's two different forms of derivation from Elikus. So, what's the opinion of Ak? So here we have to, and then he says that there was a union from base, there's a union from Klolos HaKav, the generality of the whole Kav. So in order to give you some idea of what we're talking about with all of these in Yonim, is you're all familiar with the fact that prior to what's called the Tzimtzum Harishon, until the Eivsh made the first great Tzimtzum, then there was one simple oil which was ma'ir from Hashem, and nothing could exist, or nothing, there couldn't be any oilamas or anything of that nature, due to the fact that this light was completely Ein Sof, or was completely what you might call simple. Yeah? And remember, it's not shayat that anything should exist in front of it. So then the Eibshter made what's called the Tzimtzum HaRishon. We're taught in the works of the Arizal that means that there was like a kuda, a central point, and then the whole oyer retracted in the form of a circle. Are you familiar with that? That the Arizal said that the Tzimtzum was literally, virtually circular. So there was this, I'm not particularly exact with my diagrams here. Over here you have a central point, and the oyer withdrew circularly, and it left in here what we call a mokum panui. You know what a mokum panui means? A vacuum. The word mokum panui means empty space or vacuum without any presence inside it, and the whole oyer in Sof withdrew through the Tzimtzum into this what I call circular state. Of course not a circle, a mile, meaning that it was equally transcendent to this place called the vacuum. So the truth of the matter is that inside the vacuum there really remained a presence of the Ein Sof. But we'll come to that later as we go along. So now we've now got a complete and utter retraction of the Eibshter Kaviyachol from this place in the middle. He's not there anymore, and he's only around here. And so all of that around there, that's called the Igul HaGodel. That's called the Great Circle, the Igul HaGodel. Right? And that surrounds this vacuum, absolute empty area what the Eibshter left through the Tzimtzum. In other words, according to the Rizal, the Tzimtzum began like with a central point, and the Eibshter withdrew absolutely uniformly all round, and his infinite light sort of withdrew altogether. Now that means to say that the Tzimtzum didn't take away the infinite light. The infinite light remained. It just withdrew, as it were, from a certain Kaviyachol area, which is called the vacuum. And inside the vacuum is now nothing, as it were. But once I've done that, I can now bring in and put inside that vacuum things that I want to put, as it were, because the Ein Sof and the infiniteness of the Ein Sof has withdrawn. And therefore, it's inside that I was able to bring about all the elements. So all the elements managed are inside that so-called vacuum. And so how did the Eibshter do that? The Eibshter brought about from that Igul HaGodel, he brought about a derivation of what's called a kav. He brought about a straight line, as it were, and that's called a kav. He brought about a gilui of Elokus in the form of a line which comes and touches and comes from the infinite light which is around, what we call the eagle. However, the kav only went into the vacuum, and it didn't go down to the other side of the so-called circle. Because if it did, then what would happen? It would just be swallowed up into the circle, nothing would have occurred. So therefore the kav is only what we call nogeya b'ktzei ha'elyon shel ha'igul, aval eino nogeya b'ktzei ha'tachton. He doesn't touch the lower part of the eagle, and he is a line. Now a line means already a limited something. Yeah? And there's a whole question to this: what is that line made up of? It's almost like Einsteinian questions. Yeah, we'll have to. Is a line a series of dots, or is it a straight line? As well known what Einstein knows about that. But anyway, whatever. Is the line, which is are limited for the Gilui of the Eibishter, well, that comes into the vacuum literally and relights up the vacuum, but it lights it in such a way that it's, as it were, limited. And so once I've got that, then that kav, well, that's able to produce me all these amazing oilamas, and it's from that they developed this whole concept of the beginning of what we call existing entities or existing world. Inside the Oira Godel, inside the ego of Godel, there's no existing entity, because it's just so simple and so ain't safe that nothing can exist there. And then there's the etzem atzmus of the Eibush, the way I feel something. I mean, once again, when I'm talking in place, that the atzmus of the Eibush is completely withdrawn altogether, because all this singular Godel is only a light. It's only a ha'ora, how do you call it, a luminescence from Hashem. It's not mamish the atzmus of Hashem. And the kav is for sure only a luminescence. So the kav is only a limited power. So how all of a sudden did the Eibush make that limited power? How did he all of a sudden do that? Well, that's because he already revealed the power of limitation through the tzimtzum. And so the kav is like a further development of the tzimtzum. That since we already withdrew everything, and we've introduced a power like going against the whole idea of the Gilui of the Ein Sof, so the kav is an expression of that power of what you might call limitation or holding back, that not everything should be begalui. However, notice that even though the kav is like that, in other words, the kav is like a completely different antithesis almost to the ego agor, which is the Ein Sof Mammon. However, we see that the kav touches into the ego agor, which means that the kav is really nimshach from the ego agor. Now, that's going to present us with a very interesting question as we go along, but that seems to be a paradox. But on the one hand, the kav touches into the Ein Sof Mammon, into the ego agor, and yet nonetheless he's a kav. He's just a limited line, and he's an infant symptom of limitation. So how can you have both? We're going to see that's one of the great paradoxes of the whole picture of the Rizal and later the whole Shita, the Alter Rebbe, the whole thing. That how can we have these two strange antitheses living together? For our purposes at the moment, that's the kav. So once the kav came into being, we begin getting oilamas. And the first oilam we get is what's called ach. The first oilam we get is ach. And that's an amazing union whereby really you don't have anything but you do. In other words, an ach is an oilam where everything doesn't seem to be there, but it really is. And it's all hidden in a very, very elevated botil state, that even though it's the beginning of everything, it's not really noticeable or begolem. And that's called, and there got the two names. Because Adam on the one hand indicates, like we said, the details. Admain indicates primordial. And the word primordial fits the ego agodol. So you've got in this world, you've got a union of two opposites. It's the beginning of the ashpah of the kav, and yet nonetheless it still has a certain trace in it of the absolute Ein Sof that there was in the Ha'igul. And so that's called Ak. So that's an amazing combination of. So then from Ak we go into another great symptom, which is called the symptom Ak, or it's called the Soda Dikna. The Alter Rebbe brings it in the Hakor at Shara Yichud. And then we go down into another oil which is called Akudim. You ever heard of Olam Akudim? And you go into Olam Nikudim, which is Olam HaToyu. And then you eventually reach Olam Atzilus. And then you reach through Atzilus all the three created worlds, Bria, Yetzirah, V'Yah, Asiya, and then you get down into this crazy old Luna Park down here, which is called Olam HaZeh. But we're not shown to insult Olam HaZeh, because the Eibush really got big hopes. The Eibush has tremendous hopes, despite what may look to be a tremendous mess at the moment, but the Eibush still has tremendously high hopes for Olam HaZeh. So that's basically how we get to the whole thing. So we've got to decide now that Olam Atzilus is in here somewhere. It's only the Olam. It's not a created Olam. It's only an Olam of emanation, because emanation means Gilui HaHilem. The others three words, Bria, Tzir, Latzir, there, Yesh, Mi, Ein. This is only an emanation, and it's in the middle here. So we say that it's a Dameh Le'elyain. It's similar in comparison to Ach. That's his first word. The third. Ach. It's up here. That's Ach. But, the Rebbe says, even more than that, it's similar and comparable to the whole Klolus Indian of the Kav. In other words, at the Kav, even now it is L'mayla Mi'ach, which is very, very minute, the Gila of the Kav out L'mayla Mi'ach. He said, even in Atzilus is even called Adameh, comparable not only to Ach, but even to what he calls Klolus HaKav, that's the Indian of the Kav, it's still very closely after its first revelation. That's what he says, the Taich Adameh Elyon. So we'll deal with that mention in the coming Shulim more. What is this whole idea of the Klolus HaKav? What does that mean? And what is Adameh Elyon on the part of the Elam HaTzilas? And you might say, well, I'm already signing off. I don't think this is for me. So you have to realize that this is just very basic. The truth of the matter is, if you get some idea of these inyonim, then you'll be able to understand my moral and this all. But if you think you can approach certain inyonim without having a basic knowledge of these things, then you're slightly mistaken, because these are the basic material, and that's why the Rebbe gave this unbelievable hemshech of Samech Vav. He wanted to bring all of Siddim into a knowledge of these inyanim. But as we go along, we'll deal with them more. For the evening, before this evening, that'll be enough. So everybody got some basic idea, and maybe copy that if you want. And we'll talk about these inyanim more as we go along. However, just to finish off the class, the Rebbe says that why is it that we say that it's compared Atzilus is Adameh Le'elyon L'gabi Ach and L'gabi the Klolus HaKav? Because there are two Amshochets. There's two derivations from the Eibishter. Achas b'chinas Gvul Umida, v'hainu Gilei HaKav. The meaning of limitation and into one line, what that's in from Gilei HaKav. But base and a further revelation, b'chinas Ein Sei. Shezeu ha'oras b'chinas Malchus Dein Sei. I'll explain that in the coming shir, that when he says ha'ora Malchus Dein Sei, then he means Igor HaGod. That's what he means. That's what he means, Igor HaGod. So we've got two main forms of derivation of revelation from the Eibishter. Now, on one hand, we have a limited limitation, which is the Koyach HaGavul of the Eibishter, which comes in the Kav, and then we have this unlimited light, which is also only a light. It's only a ha'ora from the Eibishter, so forth. But it's in another, or even altogether, then it remains completely Ein Sof, completely unlimited and unaffected by any Inyan of Gvul. So we've got two inyanim. On one hand, a revelation of Gvul, on the other hand, unlimited and infinite revelation. And we're going to see very shortly as we go along, that's Mamalei Kol Almin and Seifel. And that's how they all begin to shape up in their original Shoresh, or these two inyanim. So, Be'ez Hashem, we'll deal with it in more detail in coming and developing episodes. And how's the old saying, have it, we wanted it, so we got it. All right.